Please subscribe and please hit that like if you like hearing Rapaholics yap on the mic. Now, Lawbreeze and Gentlegrams, in today's episode of Lawbree in Gentleland, we gotta unpack how, while Kendrick conquered the colonizing courthouse Karen with a victory lap of cutthroat performances, calling Drake a perpetual predatory pervert during the Super Bowl spectacle and the Grammy Gala, Lawbree, the high school hitmaker, is taking a losing lap, releasing lawsuits, lame posts online, and dissing ladies in his lullaby music. Now, I see people online trying to compare this new album Drake just released to Kendrick's album GNX that was released back in November, and that would be very unfair. The only distinct similarity between the two projects is that these were the first albums released from both parties after the dust had settled from their beef. And what's very interesting about this move from Drake is that after he took that loss to Pusha T, he had Jay Prince announce to the world that he would be removing himself from that beef. And while he had planned to make his album back then, Scorpion, a complete R&B album, that Pusha beef fueled him to go back in the booth, turn that album into a two-parter with a side A and a side B, and side A was strictly hip-hop, riddled its sneak disses against Pusha and Kanye West, with Drake essentially reflecting on that beef and being exposed for having this kid. This time around, to give Drake credit, he never pulled out of this Kendrick beef. He didn't have Jay Prince defending the defamation that Pusha T poured onto the Champagne Petition Poppy. Instead, when Kendrick came knocking at the door, Drake said, "Drop, drop, drop, and not this time you following through, and talk about me liking young girls." And when Kendrick finally did that, the sexy red stunt double started spiraling and suing, and instead of spitting, he's now singing with some sexy love songs. Now, 50% of you guys think I'm Drake's biggest hater, and the other 50% of you guys love seeing me stomp on the sexy red stunt double spiraling ceremonial cemetery. So in this video, we are going to please both crowds, alright? I'm going to break this album down in full. Firstly, giving it a review with a fresh perspective as if this beef with Kendrick never happened, and attempt to give Drake as much credit as possible while still trying to be objective with my subjective perspective of this music. But of course, everything Kendrick said about Drake and the subsequent moves that the spiraling sexy red stunt double made after the beef do play a very important role in the context of the type of music he's releasing and the subject matter within it. So we'll also be commenting on this music with the added layer of all the criticisms that Kendrick made of Drake's character and how that impacts the pitfalls of a lot of what we're hearing on this project. Now, my favorite song that Drake has released since this beef ended is still the song Blue, Green, Red. And just like with that song, a lot of songs off this project have subconscious callbacks to the critiques that Kendrick made of Drake's character on the song Meet the Grams. Obviously on that song, Kendrick was speaking to each member of Drake's family, starting with his son, then going into his mother and father, pause on that, then talking to Drake's possibly metaphorical imaginary daughter, and then talking to Drake directly, emphasizing that Drake has alcohol problems, women problems, gambling problems, pill popping problems, hypersexualizing women, indulging in the vanity of fame through lust, excessive partying, substance abuse, materialism, infidelity, and ultimately, like Kendrick said, being 37 but showing up as a 7-year-old. And I bring up the song Blue, Green, Red for several reasons. Mainly because that was, in my opinion, the first time we actually saw Drake reflecting on a lot of these criticisms in a somewhat real and vulnerable state. He flipped the whole thing Kendrick was doing on Meet the Grams, where he would start the verses off by Dear Adonis or Dear Sandra, as Kendrick was basically writing letters to each one of Drake's family members. On Blue, Green, Red, Drake took a similar approach, starting each verse off with, "Please write my mother and tell her," or "Please write my father and tell him." And on this song, he's kind of admitting to some of his pitfalls, rapping, "Please write my mother and tell her the shape I'm in. 30 days I've been sober, now I'm back drinking again. Got away from the city, I'm on the outskirts of town. Friends I treated like family, they were just hanging around." Then on the second verse, he sings, "Please write my father and tell him I found some fortune and fame. They're gonna try to behead me, speak on the family name. He said my knife's in my pocket, I'm in the center of town. I tapped the side of his pocket, he wasn't joking around." And on a side note, if anyone has, a more accurate or better breakdown of this song, then let me know in the comments. But in my opinion, that whole knife's in his pocket thing was basically him admitting that he greatly underestimated Kendrick and probably regrets that decision. But I bring the song up again because this is probably my favorite song Drake has put out in a long time, mainly because it's him actually giving us a glimpse of reality. He's opening up about his drinking issues, his feelings of paranoia, being at the top and people coming to behead him or talking down on his family, also being honest about the outcome of this beef, and doing so on a song with, upbeat production and doing what Drake does best, merging the vocals and the singing with the bars and some vulnerability. So I was hoping for more of this with this project. I know this is a collab album, and I've been saying for a while, I think the best thing Drake can do is ditch the knife talk, ditch the strip club club talk, get rid of the mob boss persona, enough with the meme music, enough with the accents, go back to giving us something real. I don't know if you guys know, but any disdain that I personally have towards Drake mainly derives from the massive switch up that we saw from him artistically in 2016, where he substituted any ounce of authenticity for formulaic, shallow hits. And the reason why Not Like Us hits so hard is because Drake has been playing a character for the better part of a decade at this point. But it wasn't always like this. At one point, he was just a humble kid from Toronto.
I just always felt like an outsider. I went all Jewish school. Like I was raised in a Jewish household, I would say.
People championed him for being unique, making love songs about his pitfalls with women, his struggles with balancing fame, reflecting on the broken home he came from and the strength that his mother gave him, and embracing who he was.
The greatest advice Wayne has ever given me, he's always just like, man, please be yourself. Please don't ever try and be me or anybody else. Don't ever go get tattoos. You don't have to dress any different. And he was like, don't stop smiling either. Don't try and get mean or aggressive. He's like, just be you.
And it was that vulnerability combined with the fact that he had this strong knack for merging hip-hop and R&B that led Drake to deliver us some staples within the blog era like Take Care, So Far Gone, Nothing Was the Same. But I think it was once he won that beef with Meek Mill and he realized that people didn't really care about that authenticity, right? Because from a hip-hop perspective, you being exposed to have used ghostwriters on your hardest, most bar-focused project to date, with If You're Reading This Is Too Late, but not losing all of your credibility and respect as an artist, I think that's what made Drake realize it's not about being the greatest MC anymore. I can't have that title because the whole world now knows I use ghostwriters, but they don't care if Katy Perry uses ghostwriters. They don't care if Lady Gaga uses ghostwriters. I'll make more money giving my authenticity up and replacing it with Jamaican accents, island production, repeated formulas for cheap pop hits, bring Metro Boomin in the mix, bring Take Keith in the mix so I could still appeal to the hip-hop fans, and if I can't become the #1 MC, I'll just become the most successful rapper, the most successful pop artist, and the most successful R&B artist. I'll develop formulas for each genre of music so it's easily repeatable, and I'll never get too vulnerable so no one will have enough to criticize me on. Those Drake is the type of guy type of memes will slowly die out, and they'll respect me as this tough mob boss of the game. Phony Montana. So when Kendrick pulled his card with Not Like Us, calling out this lack of authenticity, Drake had no real comeback, right? Because he couldn't pull an Eminem and 8 Mile approach with the whole, I know everything he's about to say against me, I am white, I am an effing bum, I do live in a trailer with my mom. Because Drake needed that acceptance from the culture to maintain this persona. He needed Atlanta. He needed the accents. He's gone so long playing this character that it's genuinely who he's become. And it's going to play an important role shortly when discussing this album, but Drake literally admits this to us on his 2023 song, The Shoe Fits, rapping to all the ladies wondering why Drake can't rap like that same old guy. It's because I don't know how anymore. I don't know how. I've had my beliefs tested, my faith broken in half. I try to joke and I laugh, but I just don't know how anymore. To get those levels of vulnerability that we saw from Drake on a Take Care, on a Nothing Was the Same, is going to be impossible because he's gone so far down this rabbit hole of maintaining this character that it would be impossible to try and channel that energy back again. Similar to Kanye. We'll never get the old Kanye. We'll never get the college dropout graduation Kanye because his lifestyle and values today are nowhere near congruent to how he was living back then. And in my opinion, this is going to be the root of Drake's downfall. It's a lot of what Kendrick said on Meet the Grams, but Drake has said this himself and actually takes pride in it. At the beginning of the 2010s decade, like I showed you guys before, Drake took pride in the fact that Lil Wayne emphasized to him that he had this gift of being unique, something we hadn't really seen in hip-hop before, and that was his superpower. But by the end of the 2010s decade, when he was asked about longevity and who was going to take the torch into the 2020s and his competition with J. Cole and Kendrick, Drake took pride in the fact that what has kept him on top, what has kept him #1 in hip-hop, in pop, and in R&B for so long wasn't only his competitive spirit, but also mainly the fact that he lived the quote-unquote rap life.
I feel like with them, I don't know if they really want to keep going. Like, a lot of times with rappers, you guys want to, like, go out on top, right? Nobody wants to overstay their welcome. You know, you put out 2 or 3 projects and no one's connecting. So I could see Cole saying, okay, this is it for me for a minute, or Kendrick saying this is it for me. But I feel like with you, I feel like your spirit is more from that competitive thing that I don't see you saying, like, this is my last one, I'm going to take a couple years off.
It's the competitive thing, and it's also just like, I'm probably one of the few people that really lives this rap life.
And I think that's Drake's biggest problem, right? Is that in order to be the biggest hit maker, in order to have the biggest bangers, the most songs that ring off in the club, you got to be in the club every night, hearing what resonates with the crowd and seeing what the youth is gravitating towards, and then gravitate yourself towards that. Sexy Red is hot right now. Okay, let's do a song with her. Playboi Carti is influencing every young rapper today. Okay, let's run off with his sound. Let's get Lil Baby and Lil Durk on all my albums so I could capitalize off their wave. But eventually you become so engulfed in this lifestyle of vanity, in this constant loop of chasing the next thing, that becomes your identity. Ironically, his authenticity lies in the fact that he's always been an actor.
I really live this rap life for real. I'm really out here partying. You see the house. I'm in the streets. I'm really out here. And you know,
The lifestyle.
To those guys' credit, and a lot of like some of the inspiration I've taken from them for the last 6 months is just like, you know, they come, they do what they need to do, and they go back to their real life. They have beautiful families. And so that's something that like I've invested my time in lately, but like for the most part,
You out here.
I'm out here, man. I'm really out here, like living the rap life.
And that's kind of a sad realization, right? He emphasizes that Cole and Kendrick do what feels authentic to them, they release their body of work, and then they go home to their families. Drake doesn't have a family. Well, he's got a mother and father and a kid, but he's pushing 40 with no wife, no happy home.
Why would you mention my fiance? Wow. Like, no women, no children. What's up? Like, what we doing? Wait a minute. What is the real issue with you and marriage? Now I got to dig in and see, what are y'all like? What's your family like? Oh, your dad left you at 5. Oh, I get that. He never walked you to the bus stop. You're mad about this. You know, your mom, she never remarried. You don't even know what like family is. So of course you don't dig marriage.
And he talks about that on this album, which we'll get into shortly. But again, he substitutes that for partying, strip clubs, living, again, that quote-unquote rap life. But when your card is pulled, when your authenticity is pulled, when the whole world is chanting you are not like them, I think that's when it's time to take a step back and play into your superpower of being that, emotional, honest, humble kid from Toronto. Now, here's where we'll give Drake credit. Kendrick told him, stop running to America to imitate heritage. I like Drake with the melodies. I don't like Drake when he act tough. And Drake definitely took notes because that was the exact approach he took with this new album. The vulnerability isn't there. The shallow, materialistic lifestyle is more prevalent than ever, but this is Drake's definite most blatant attempt at making an album that sounds like Canada in the winter. And I'm a guy living right now in Canada in the winter. It's tough out here, man. We're about to get 40 centimeters of snow tomorrow. You Americans don't even know what a centimeter is, let alone 40 centimeters worth of snow. And I could tell you two things as a Canadian. One, it's been tough communicating with my Canadian peers the gravity in which Drake has fallen off over the last few years. Hopefully they've watched the first 10 minutes of this video and can get a better understanding of where I'm coming from. And number two, as a Canadian, unless I'm completely missing where all these giant Canadian artists have stolen their artistry from, a quote-unquote Canadian sound definitely does exist, and to give Drake credit, he definitely pioneered that. Now, yes, The Weeknd came in shortly after Drake and did Canadian R&B much better than Drake did, and Drake kind of stole a lot of those elements for his most R&B charged project, like a Take Care. But The Weeknd's first project was released in March of 2011. Drake was making songs like this in 2010.
So if you gotta go, if there's anything I should know.
So you can't deny that, yes, while Drake has stolen a lot from The Weeknd, from sonic inspiration to flat out stealing his songs, The Weeknd also definitely took a lot of inspiration from Drake, and it was the trifecta of Drake's blending of R&B and hip-hop with The Weeknd's dark, hazy sound, and then Party Next Door's moody, hypnotic, trap R&B bangers that concocted this subgenre of Canadian hip-hop and B. It's not like fully R&B, it's not fully hip-hop, it's a hybrid of the two, laced with this hazy, atmospheric, dark, spacious production, creating this cold yet emotionally charged feel, kind of like Toronto at night. And so you're getting this on this project. Drake is definitely running back to Canada, but it's a very lazy attempt at doing so, and emphasizes that Drake is really stuck in this dark lifestyle of partying, paranoia, and indulgences, and the lack of maturity that he's displayed all across Instagram, live streams, and basketball games since this beef has ended is most definitely also apparent within the subject matter of this album. When I think of the pinnacle of that Canadian sound, I go back and think of songs like Trust Issues by Drake. And he opens that song singing, all I care about is money in the city I'm from, I'ma sip it till I feel it, I'ma smoke it till it's done, I don't really give a F and my excuse is that I'm young. But what's his excuse at this point? Or does he even need an excuse? Should we just expect that there should be no maturity, no evolution within his music? Am I just nitpicking here? Like, these are the type of questions I'm asking myself going into into this album because as a Canadian, as someone who grew up on Lil Wayne, watching Lil Wayne usher in this random Canadian who grew up maybe 7-8 hours away from me, bringing a fresh sound into a genre I already loved and grew up on, but talking about things that I could actually relate to, for a long time, I championed Drake. The reason I go so hard with the hate today is because a lot of what Kendrick said in that battle, I've been feeling for the last 10 years. Music has been void of real emotion. The songwriting feels flat to what we'd gotten in the past. And I only compare Drake to older Drake. I'm seeing people on Twitter saying, you know, Drake can make a Kendrick album, but Kendrick can't make a Drake album. I don't think either of them can make art that makes the other one great, if that makes sense. But they each have a unique lane, and I just want to see Drake do what I believe he was once great at doing. He pioneered this Canadian sound, but then ran off to the islands, ran off to Atlanta. And now he's coming back home, but sounds like he's hiding behind Party Next Door to deliver a half-baked version of a product that he was once great at producing. And I think it's because he's lost himself. He's gotten so caught up in that quote-unquote rap life, as he puts it, into concocting these formulaic hits, to where now everything kind of just sounds like one flat song bleeding into the next. The songwriting is lazy, the soul is gone. And I can't emphasize enough, I was once a very big Drake fan. Drake has actually written, no ghostwriter, some amazing R&B records. Fall for Your Type, Shut It Down, The Real Her, which he samples in this album, which helps you realize the vast contrast in his songwriting back then versus today. Even his more recent, less versatile, one-dimensional R&B cuts like Jaded or Bahamas Promises still evoke some emotion. I think he actually put out one of his greatest R&B records of all time very recently with Tried Our Best off For All the Dogs. I'm happy to give Drake credit where credit is due. We're just not going to sit here and act like this album didn't feature a whole lot of what Drake was much better at producing in the past. And then you factor in the whole element of this is the first statement we're getting from Drake since this whole battle with Kendrick. He told the world you're a colonizing, predatory, cosplaying, vice-ridden sellout, and this is what you decide to follow it up with. Also important noting that both Kendrick and J. Cole have dropped tracks, Kendrick dropping multiple tracks, reflecting on this entire situation, where they stood with their opponents, their whole perspective on the outcome of this beef. And Drake is the only one of the big three to not give us a full-fledged song offering his, analysis and perspective on the situation, except for a leaked freestyle where he talks about how sad he was that LeBron switched sides, and a couple cheap shots at Joe Budden and petty references on a couple songs off this project like F a rap beef, I'm trying to get the party lit. We'll dissect that shortly, but again, I'm trying to come into this with the fresh perspective of this Kendrick beef never happened. This is just a random Drake project on a clean slate. So he starts off with the intro track, CN Tower. I actually don't think this is a bad song at all. Drake's intros have always been pretty good and pretty diverse too. From a Tuscan Leather to a Champagne Poetry to a Survival to a Over My Dead Body, Fireworks, Virginia Beach, he's very versatile with the intros and usually starts his albums off on a high note. This is kind of a slower song, him and Party singing in this moody, ominous tone about the city being pretty when it's dead, just like a flower, talking about the colors that the CN Tower are lit up as. You can't get more Canadian than that. Definitely the most Canadian he's ever started an album off as, and a pretty accurate depiction of the Canadian landscape on a cold, dark winter night as well. And the production's nice as well. It has this same melody as Lollipop by Lil Wayne. Very subtle though, you couldn't really catch it. It's in the background But then Drake's verse kind of just drags on. He's doing the same vocal stretch at the end of every line. And he does this a lot throughout the entire album. He's done this a lot on most of his recent albums where he just kind of strings out this rhyme scheme without switching up the vocal delivery. So it just comes off as very monotonous. All the while he's talking about, this girl not answering his text. So he has to email her and questioning her if she really saw his text. Comparing the red color of the CN Tower to the red label under the text that he sent her. Nothing but exquisite wordplay over here, but then Party comes in kind of singing the same exact chorus as Drake, not really switching it up. They do this again. This is another thing they do repeatedly throughout the entire album is sing the same chorus as one another, so it makes you kind of think they're talking about the same girl or one of them just ghost wrote the entire song for the other person. Either way kind of adds into this whole monotony thing that I'm talking about, or homogeny, if that's the right word. Homogeneity, I think is how you pronounce it. Similarity, uniformity is basically what I'm trying to say. There's no reason for this album being 21 songs when there's so much repetition in the flows, in the choruses, in both Party and Drake's verses, in the harmonizing. It almost feels like AI sometimes. And you can't make the excuse that this is just R&B. And that's why you're getting this repetitive nature nature in the songwriting. Like, Drake has always kind of been one-dimensional in his singing, but the flows, the delivery didn't always feel so repetitive. Then we get to the second song, which doesn't do much to shake things up. Drake comes in singing Mothballs. Yes, that's literally what he said and how he sounded. Another thing I hate on recent Drake R&B songs where he has these like corny punchlines, if you could call them that, like on Slime You Out where he's singing whipped and chained you like American slaves. I mean, that's beyond corny, but you know, the pun itself is just tacky. It's bad wordplay. Same thing here. Mothballs, I can't get the smell out my clothes. That's how he opens this song off. And again, my biggest problem with a lot of the songs off this album is that the delivery is stagnant and repetitive. Like, he starts his verse off, mothballs, I can't get the smell out my clothes, and then the next line is New York calling me up in the bros. 3 months it's been since we said hello. It's just not pleasant on the ears. Like, R&B is supposed to be soothing. Again, this just sounds like AI, because whenever Drake tries to sound like there's some soul in his voice and his vocals, you get these like very repetitive, almost tone deaf, harsh on the ears vocal inflections that are repeated over and over again like a formula. Mothballs, New York, 3 months, she wasn't good to me anyway, I know. Like, bruh, who is listening to this and feeling like relaxed or whatever emotion this is supposed to invoke in you? Is this authentic Canadian R&B? Sure. Is it the laziest form of it? Is it some of the worst songwriting and laziest harmonizing that we've gotten from Drake in his career? I mean, I think so. Let me try to be positive here. The beat switch in the middle of the song keeps it engaging, and then you got, you know, Party kind of harmonizing, which is a nice contrast to Drake's vocals. They've always meshed very well together. I just much prefer them on more energetic, better written songs like a Recognize or an Over Here or Preach. And I bring up this old Drake so much because, like, take for example even the second beat on this Mothball song. Like, it's a very stripped back, spacey beat with these dark chords. It's the perfect backdrop for Drake to spit like a classic Drake verse over. Like, he had Party harmonizing. The logical thing to do after that is have Drake come in and spit a verse to kind of switch up the vibe. Listen to a Recognize or a Preach and you'll know what I'm talking about. Party's harmonizing, then Drake comes in with the rapping. And Drake does that here, but he's delivering like his best Young Thug impression. Like, instead of I gotta get you those snow tires for your Mercedes, I'm glad you reminded me, baby, we're getting
I've been peeking out that Addy every day. It's been hard for me to put that shit away.
I don't know, maybe I'm nitpicking here. I don't know. The next song, Something About You, the energy, the tone stays the exact same. The beat is repetitive. The hook is extremely repetitive. That's another side note. I haven't heard a good Drake hook in years. I think that's one of his biggest problems at this point, is he went from Wayne saying we're gonna be all right if we put Drake on every hook to having some of his biggest hits as of recent times be carried by the hooks of other artists like 21 Savage on Night Talk, or Thames on Wait For You, Future on Way Too Sexy, Yeet on I Don't Give a F, Sexy Red on Rich Baby Daddy. The last great Drake hook that I could remember, and he's had some good ones, but the last great one I could remember is all the way back in 2021 on Fair Trade with Travis Scott. I've been losing friends and finding peace, but honestly that sounds like a fair trade to me. And it's funny because when he lost all those friends back when Metro, Kendrick, and Future put out Like That, he didn't choose peace, he chose violence, and that wasn't such a good trade for him. But yeah, the hook on this song, he just keeps repeating something about you, saw something about you. And this whole album, it kind of sounds like he's piggybacking off of Party's signature sound. Meanwhile, he makes Party take the back seat. Like, pretty much the exact same thing he did with 21 Savage on Her Loss, adopting that trap sound, but 21 Savage barely being present throughout the entire track list. Same thing Kanye did with Ty Dolla $ign on Vultures, except that kind of sounded like a Kanye album. Drake really wanted to lean into that Canadian R&B bag for this one, so this definitely does sound like a Party album, but Party's just not that present here. He kind of sounds half asleep a lot of the time. I mean, I've had this problem with Party Next Door for a while also. That could be, you know, a story for another video. But go listen to Party Next Door 1 and then listen to this and tell me he doesn't sound a lot lazier here than he did back then. Then we get to the next song, Crying in Chanel. I knew I wouldn't like this one based off the snippet that they first previewed. I hate when Drake does this kind of like falsetto singing where he almost sounds like he's crying as he's talking about this girl crying in Chanel.
Shorty right here crying in the middle of Chanel.
Let's move on. The next song, Spider-Man. This is where they sample the beat from The Real Her, a classic song off Take Care, and this is where you could really tell the difference when you hear him on the same production, but this time around, he's using this whiny voice, drenched in autotune, repeating the same lyrics and melodies over and over again with this lethargic delivery, and really talking about nothing of substance. Talking about being Spider-Man or Superman and not saving any woman. Like, what's the point of sampling one of your classic records if you're just reminding us how much better you were back then than you are now? Maybe this will be a grower, to be fair. I do want to be fair. I don't want to just make this like any criticism I could thrown at Drake. My perspective of him has been very negative over the last decade because I feel like he's diluted the quality of his music, but sometimes my bias does blur my overall, perception of his music off first listen, and then as the years go by, some of his songs do become growers. I don't hate all Drake music, and I definitely don't hate all the songs off this album. I just think it's a lot lazier than what we've gotten from him in the past. Then we move on to Deeper, which is just a Party Next Door song with some Drake crooning. It's spacey, it's dark. Nothing really stands out off the first, 4 or 5 listens that I've given it, but maybe it'll grow on me. Again, I've given this album like a good 3 to 4 listens. I've really tried giving this a fair shot. Then we get to Small Town Fame, where Drake is using, again, this Young Thug, Lil Yachty type of flow that he's been using a lot since, like, Her Loss. This sounds like Jumbotron Pop in Part 2, and it's like he has a good R&B/hip-hop voice where he could blend the two together. I don't know why he has to use or imitate someone else's accent, but again, let's not focus on the criticisms that Kendrick already pointed out and judge this on a clean slate. This is one of the first instances on the track list where you hear that quote-unquote rap life that Drake talks about living really come into full fruition. He's talking about how lame this girl's guy is and how now this girl's trying to flaunt on him on Instagram, and he keeps repeating the line that he's hating too hard. It's kind of like his song You Broke My Heart from For All the Dogs. I hate this repetitive stuff. He's a good hitmaker, but I don't understand why he thinks people want to hear the same line repeated over and over again. At least when he used to do it, he used to kind of switch it up, like, I got money to blow, oh. He wouldn't keep it so one-dimensional. Now it's just, I'm hating hard, I'm hating too hard, I'm hating hard, I'm hating too hard. I feel like he's talking about me, though. Like, I'm hating too hard, I think, with this. I'm being a little too harsh. So let's keep it a bit positive. The beat picks up. Again, I like these kind of beat switches. It keeps things a little engaging. He goes back from the crooning back to the Lil Yachty Jumbotron Poppin' flow, which Lil Yachty actually ghost wrote, by the way. I do like the Charlie XCX wordplay that he brought in here. He's talking about losing a lot of brothers to this dog game. Could be a double entendre for, his phony Montana persona, losing a lot of brothers, like them actually losing their lives in the streets. Or maybe he's talking about, friends that he lost within the industry, like LeBron James, DeMar DeRozan, The Weeknd, Future, Rick Ross, etc. This is the first time on the album where he actually makes somewhat of a reference to the beef. Then we get into one of the most beautiful songs off the record, which Party and Drake are not present on, which is Pim's Dilemma. It's a beautiful interlude by the artist Pim. I like how he uses these different singers for interludes off his projects to kind of switch up the vibe and show us, like what a real vocalist can do. We've seen this with Sampha, Georgia Smith, Thames, even Party Next Door was on the Wednesday night interlude of If You're Reading This Is Too Late. Ironically, Kendrick was on, I think, the first interlude he did off an album where he's not present at all. He just lets the other artists take full control off the Buried Alive interview from Take Care. Even way back to So Far Gone, he did this with Omarion off the Bria's interlude, which is a great song as well. I have no problem with this. This was a good song. Or interlude. It was only like a minute and a half. But then we get on to Brian Steele. This is, again, the type of Drake I hate. Like, with For All the Dogs, my worst criticism was that he was doing his best on the hip-hop tracks to sound like Lil Yachty or Carti or Young Thug, doing an impression of them. He's doing the exact same thing here. He raps, bro told me put the beef to the side, I can't, while he shouts out Brian Steele, Young Thug's lawyer. But the irony of all this, him not being able to put the beef to the side while shouting out a lawyer who was fighting for an artist whose lyrics were being used against him in a court of law. All the while, Drake put the beef to the side with Kendrick to sue his record label over lyrics used in a rap beef. So the irony is just like despicable. And he references how he doesn't want to make up or patch things up with anyone rapping. People want to meet up, talk about stuff. I'm vegan now. But it's a stark contrast from just the line before where he writes, Broski just hit me, said, put all the beef on the side. I can't. I'm heated now. But then, oh, they want to talk about this stuff. I'm vegan now. So which is it? Are you avoiding the beef or you can't avoid the beef? Evil eyes were staring at me. I see it now. Yeah, shout out Brian Steele. Take off the cups. We're leaving now. Then again, he emphasizes that, he's really living that rapper life. He's really out here partying in the streets. No one else is doing it. He raps, beefing with boys that we don't ever see. I'm out every night and they're not in the streets. Probably a shot at Kendrick because, he referenced how Kendrick was cool cooped up in his New York apartment, coming up with quadruple entendres. He keeps talking that mob boss Phony Montana talk with 25 deep when they walking me out because there's too many P words been effing with me. Alright, I don't really like that song, but then we get to Give Me a Hug, which I feel like is a highlight off the album. And it's funny because Drake goes on like this 3-track run where Party Next Door is literally not on any of the songs. Again, it's like he slapped him on here just to say like, look, if I flop, I'm going to blame it on Party. If I can't keep up, melodically or carry this full album where it's engaging enough, where people will say like he's really back, then I'll just lean on Party and have him kind of switch it up to keep things engaging. But I'll give it to Drake. I do think he is the highlight and the standout on this album. It's not saying too much because it's not such a great album, but let's touch on a highlight here. So Give Me a Hug. Here he's, really reflecting on the beef, starting off right away off the first verse. Drake elimination, fake intimidation, take a minute, take a deep breath, have a little bit of patience. Then he starts going into some self-affirmations, rapping, Drizzy, you amazing, you the inspiration, you set the bar for the next generation, you're Neo in the Matrix, these guys just Nemo in the ocean, small fish making kids feel emotion, and, comparing himself to Neo in the Matrix after he walked out in his Australian concert with a sweatshirt with a bunch of bullet holes in it, emphasizing, that the whole 20v1 didn't take him out, similar to, Neo in the Matrix, bending backwards in slow motion, evading all these incoming bullets. Both of them having that superhuman ability to, escape death. Kendrick saying that, Drake is a poison and a colonizer to the culture. Drake flipping that, saying, he's amazing, he's an inspiration to the next generation. The Nemo thing, not only saying that, there's small fish in a big sea, but, Nemo was lost throughout the entire movie. He's saying, like, all these guys are lost without him. He comes in with some more slick wordplay, saying, they all used you for promotion, truer words have never been spoken, people want to see me RIP on a shirt like I'm Hulk Hogan. RIP being like a double entendre with people want to see rip me on a shirt like I'm Hulk Hogan ripping his shirt. Rip being like RIP, like people want to see me dead basically. He goes on to thank his fans for riding with him, saying, I appreciate the fans rocking with me. This is just a small token. Maybe saying like there's bigger projects, bigger albums to come in the future, like a solo album where he actually touches on this beef in depth. Then he gets into a rhyme scheme that we've heard him use before on his feature on Young Thug's song, Oh You Went, where he raps, really effing with a visionary, only reason I got a girl and I ain't getting married cause I'm really out here filling up the itinerary till I'm 6 feet in a cemetery. Bulletproof door so heavy got me rolling around like a dignitary. Funny how it's only B N-words that are waiting on the boy's obituary, cause if I die, it's these guys that become the sole beneficiary. And what the F are they gonna do with it? Now, this is a direct reference to Kendrick, right? Because Kendrick obviously called Drake out for his mistreatment of women and, the broken family he grew up in, his father kind of being an absent figure, leading Drake to treat women in a similar fashion and avoiding, marriage, having a strong household, having that family unity. Pusha T emphasized the same thing, saying, you're coming after my wife. You're always coming after your opponent's, significant other, the female in their life, as this war tactic to divide them from their loved ones. You do this because you've never had true love yourself and you've never actually seen true love in your own household, in your upbringing. Drake flips that to say the only reason I don't have a girl and I'm not getting married is because I'm really out here filling up the itinerary till I'm 6 feet in a cemetery. Again, going back to that clip of him talking about the contrast in his lifestyle versus Cole and Kendrick's, where, he's really living that rapper life. He's really filling up his roster with a bunch of women, out partying every night in the clubs. He's really, he's always in the streets. Mob-tied Phony Montana. But there's some good energy here. There's some good energy on this song. And he references Kendrick again, saying how it's only B-word, N-words that are waiting on the boy's obituary, because if I die, it's these guys that become the sole beneficiary, and what the F are they going to do with it? Had the girls up at 29 on stage twerking with a dictionary. Guilt trips, not Turks trips when it's cold out here in February. Because obviously Kendrick wanted to come for that top position. Drake is saying, what are they going to do with the crown if they have it? Their quintuple entendres are too complex to be played in a club. The girls are going to have to be twerking while reading the dictionary to understand what they're actually saying in their rhymes. Plus, Kendrick, reflecting on the entire beef, drawing the line in the sand between him and, anyone who kind of stands in his way on a song like Watch the Party Die. This is a direct callback to that, because he's saying, if the party dies, if I die, what are you guys going to do to lead the way? Your music can't be played in the clubs. It can't be played at the parties. Hip-hop will be boring without me, essentially. Plus, Kendrick's whole thing on Meet the Grams saying, he'd rather be in Turks, popping perks. That whole song was a guilt trip. And Drake flips that, saying, he's going to be taking you on guilt trips, not Turk trips when it's cold in February. So essentially saying, watch the party die. Okay, if the party dies, if I die, if I leave the game and you're the one in control of it, and you're going to suck the fun out of it with, your introspection and your complex lyricism and all that. Because who likes that, right? We all just want to be twerking without a dictionary. But then the beat switches, again, I like these beat switches. He talks about Lil Durk, who's currently convicted on a murder for hire charge, saying that his homeboy, Durk's homeboy, said that Marvin's Room was his favorite song to do drills to. I don't know why he's obsessed with or puts value on, artists talking about murder, but he says 1,000 guys rapping about murder and like 10 guys that'll actually do it. I hope this is more of a double entendre to say 1,000 guys that'll rap about killing me, but only a couple of them can actually compete. Then he goes on to show love to 21 Savage, saying, Savage, you're the only guy checking on me when we was really in some stuff. And to give 21 Savage some credit, he has always been loyal for Drake. Even back when Drake was beefing with Kanye, he said he wouldn't have been on Donda because he was already on CLB. He kind of threw like a sneak diss at Kendrick, or maybe even two. He had a bar on a Lil Baby album talking about Kung Fu, and on his song It's Up with Drake, he rapped, made a couple songs, think he hot now, hit him up, think he Pac now. Could be a reference to Kendrick's, deep admiration of Tupac. Anyways, Drake continues, obviously not shouting out Kendrick by name, or calling out Kendrick by name, but instead he calls out the co-host of the Joe Budden podcast. Can't even call Joe Budden out by name, but still disses him by taking aim at a woman affiliated with him. Again, this obsession with going after the women in his opposition's life. And I'm going to do a whole breakdown sometime this week of Joe Budden and Drake's history, their whole back and forth, because Joe Budden predicted a lot of this. Way before Kendrick, way before Pusha T, Joe Budden even stated he was the one who gave the torch to them to, have the ammo that they had to really take Drake down. Anyways, Drake raps, Melissa Ford, you're a legend from the 6. Hate to see you with a D-sucker. Melissa Ford from Canada. Drake saying he hates to see her sitting next to, a D-sucker like Joe Budden. That's the most blatant shot we get on the entire album. Drake continues rapping, they be dropping stuff, but we're dropping harder stuff. F a rap beef, I'm trying to get the party lit for the girls. And it goes back to the whole thing of if I die, they're going to be up there twerking with some dictionaries, and is a callback to an even earlier Drake line, which I think set the precedent for how people view Drake's lyrics, or any Drake haters, if you hate Drake, then that means you don't get girls. Because he rapped on Lord Knows saying, know that I don't make music for guys that don't get girls, so those are the ones I count on to diss me and overlook me. Now he's saying, F all this beef stuff, F all this competitive hip-hop stuff, I'm just trying to get the party lit for the girls. That's my main objective. I do gotta ask, though, with that whole narrative, do you think Drake's sitting in the booth okay, how do I target men who have a lot of sex? That's who I need to target. That's who I want to make music for. Because I'll tell you, when I'm with a girl, I'd much rather put on some Chris Brown, some Weeknd. There's a lot of R&B I'd go to before I'd play Drake around some girls. I don't know. But it's funny, he goes from dissing all his ops to, at the end of the song, singing along to the, samples that he's sampling of Aaron Hall's I Miss You track. It's so classic Drake to go from dissing the ops, being all aggressive, switching the beat up, sing a bit about the girls, then go into this whole harmony talking about, I miss you and give me a hug. It's classic Drake, but I do like this type of Drake, where we get everything basically. We get the harmonizing, where he doesn't sound half asleep or like he's trying to imitate someone else. We get, the rapping, we get the confidence, we get the metaphors, we get some hunger from him. This is definitely the best song so far on this project. But then we go into another low point on this project with Raining in Houston, another solo Drake song. It's more whiny, repetitive, soulless, sing-songy type vibes. He's talking about, just pure nonsense. He's talking about hookah. He's talking about blickies. He sounds like he's living a more immature life than ever, and he's more paranoid and sad than ever, as if this beef really took a part of his soul out. And the relationships he's having with women have just become more and more immature. Talking about being in the club, talking to a girl who's vaping while she texts. It's not just the monotonous singing, it's also the corny, soulless, substanceless subject matter that make these songs feel like they're AI, basically. Then the next song, Lasers. I like the harmonizing on this one a bit better. I like the, back and forth with Party and Drake. Maybe that's what I meant when I said Party kind of breaks the monotony of this album. Keeps it a little more engaging. We just heard 3 Drake tracks back to back. You kind of start rolling your eyes by the end of it. On Drake's verse on this song, I don't know if he's talking maybe indirectly about, Kendrick's situation with his fiance, because obviously on Family Matters, Drake alluded to Kendrick abusing her. Here he sings, said he hit you after that one fight. Closed fist, he's fried, I'm heated, I don't really want to speak about it. I'm brushing them guys as soon as we see them. No empathy for them and I mean it. Don't tell me show no sympathy. I told you what you meant to me. This guy done put you through too much pain. Session number 1, it's gonna hurt a bit. Session 2, that hurt might make you learn a bit. Session 3, I know that you'll be used to that. At least we're starting fresh in my brain. At least he's talking about, something at least somewhat serious or mature on this song. Not, trying to hit on a girl while she's vaping in the club. But again, a lot of these R&B songs, they just both sound like they're half asleep. He did this with For All the Dogs too. And again, I love a lot of Drake R&B music. Like songs like The Motion, Connection, Jungle. These songs had a lot of variety to them. The ones on this project just sound very one-dimensional. But then we kind of switch things up, all right? We get Meet Your Padre. This is Drake's second attempt at colonizing the Mexican sound. This time he's literally doing a Mexican accent, which can maybe be considered borderline racist. Aside from the accent, I can't tell if I'm kind of vibing to the song or not though. Like, I like the beat. It has a good rhythm. Very groovy with that mariachi sound. And aside from Gimme a Hug, this is the most awake he sounded on this entire album. But it's funny, he sounds the most awake when he's doing a Mexican impression. And that Mexican accent really ruins it. But otherwise, like, the melody is here. The pocket he's in is kind of fire. With the whole, left and right, then left again, and na. I don't know if I got the lyrics right, but yeah, I like that pocket he's in. But this is either going to be like, we get over the whole, disgusting accent adoption thing, and this becomes a grower, or it just ages horribly. I think it's going to be the latter because even the bars on this thing are crazy, crazy cringe. She kissed my cheek and I said mucho gracias. Like, this sounds like me trying to speak Spanish to the locals when I was on my buddy's bachelor party in Cancun. Like, this was exactly what Kendrick meant when he said, you're not a colleague, you're a colonizer. There's no accent you could sell me. Party's not leaning into the accent so hard, so he sounds pretty good on this. Like, again, I can't tell so far if this is my favorite song on this project because this is the one where they're taking the most risk, or if it's the one I hate the most because I'm just cringing at every bar, every accent that they do. Like, he's literally just putting on a mariachi costume and slapping it right in the middle of this track list of AI-generated Canadian R&B songs. It's insanity. But anyways, then we get to another highlight. This is by far my favorite song off this album. This is a great Drake song. This is like everything I love from him. It's him tapping into like some old Kanye style flows. The song's called Nokia, by the way. He's tapping into, that touch the sky type of Kanye flow, like Lisa Bada hour I stand online, I just on in the past. After I got my advance, I just wanted to shine. He's using that same flow here, and then he does like this like auto-tune vocal stretch, exactly like how T-Pain used to do. But this is pretty good. This is pretty good. I don't love the repetitive hook. Again, I think that's one of Drake's biggest problems is that he hasn't put out a good hook in years. I think there was a lot more he could have done with this production, but again, the production is great and the beat switch is even better. He's got some like Brockhampton vibes going on the second beat. I'm sure they kind of sampled it from an older sound that I'm just blanking on right now. But I like this second verse a lot. This is a new energy, he's out the box. This is what I like. And yes, it's a little formulaic, especially when, he keeps repeating the line, I'm going to ice you out like Gretzky, very Canadian. Just repeat it a little too much. Like you really had TikTok in mind when you were concocting this, even though you're trying to kind of break boundaries a little bit with this type of song. But this song is really good, and like for me at least, like I know a song is a standout when I'm listening to an album in full and I get to a song and I'm like, okay, wait, let me replay that one, let me spin it back one more time. That's how you know a song is a standout, because you want to go back and play it twice. Then he takes some more risks on the song Die Trying with Yeba. She has a great feature. But like, bro, what is this? Again, this is another one where I don't know if I'm going to love this song in a couple months from now or I'm going to hate it. Like, this sounds like some 2000s like Natasha Bedingfield, I Got a Pocket Full of Sunshine parody, or like Hey There Delilah. Like, he made a Wagwan Delilah parody song. Now he's literally interpolating Hey There Delilah into like a real song. Like, this sounds like it belongs in like a L'Oreal shampoo commercial or something. He's going into this like alternative country pop lane. I don't even know what you'd call this, but it's not bad though. It's not bad. I don't mind him trying new things. At least he kind of sounds, inspired. And, talking about Canadian sound, like this is definitely something you would have heard on Canadian radio back in like 2007. This was all they played. Big Canadian pop vibes on this one. Then another highlight comes in on the track after Die Trying with Somebody Love Me. And this might be my favorite like R&B cut off the record. Party sounds awake again. It's still a little repetitive with the flows, but the energy is there. The harmonizing's beautiful. Drake is definitely going into Party's World heavy on this one, but aside from them kind of like repeating the same lyrics as one another, which I don't really think is how you should do a duet. Like each artist should bring their own kind of unique, vocals and lyrics to the song. But aside from that, this is what I wanted. Like some variety with the vocals, some real, soul while you're singing, some dark, moody production, but some highly emotional harmonizing within it. And so far, I think this is the best 3-track run off the project. Nokia, Die Trying, and Somebody Loves Me. Definitely my 3 highlights so far, along with Gimme a Hug and possibly the intro, CN Tower. Then we get into Celibacy, where he makes reference to the beef, but he's talking to a girl. He says, we not like them and they not like us, which is kind of funny. But otherwise, the flow is repetitive. Again, something we've heard a million times. The vocal performance isn't bad. The beat switch wasn't really enough, in my opinion, to keep things engaging for me and overpower, the monotony in the harmonizing. But I like the last beat. It's dark. It fits with Party's vocals. He's just not keeping it good enough with, the lyrics and the harmonizing. It's not engaging enough. And then the bars are so corny. Like, life is good between your thighs. Shake till you're paralyzed. I'm rocking you straight to sleep. Love having you so weak. Then we get into On My Way. The beat is good. It's hypnotizing, but Party comes in again with bad delivery, bad lyrics. The chorus goes, last week you gave me the sickest threesome. This week you gave me the sickest head. Last night you tried to blow my mind, and tonight you tried to do it again. Drake singing, your ex needs to turn that frown upside down, smile and keep it pushing before it goes south. Can you come home with me tonight? Are you allowed? I know you got kids at the house. Pay the nanny double and come roll with the owl. You'll be back in time to make him breakfast, no doubt. Just stay the night with me, get nasty. This kind of reminds me of that Drewski skit where like he's making fun of nurses that go out partying till all hours of the night, and then they're, posting stories on Instagram of them feeding their kids, like as if they're such a responsible mom, and then they're at work dancing with all the hospital equipment, barely doing their job, barely taking care of their kids. It's like, yeah, come get nasty with the rapper all night and, just pay the nanny to take care of the kids. Again, just shallow relationships, but, he's living that rapper life. This is the rapper life. Then you get Glorious, which could maybe be the worst song on the album. You got like Ice Spice doing these little talking bits throughout the song. It's a sexy drill beat. I've never really cared for that production. Then he does, his best Ice Spice impression. Like he's colonizing that Ice Spice sound now, doing her ad-libs, saying like grah, which is weird because he was actually one of the first rappers to put her on, to discover her. He followed her, he flew her out to his OVO Fest a couple years back, then randomly unfollowed her off Instagram and then took shots at her on, I think it was Back Outside Boys off Her Loss, saying she's a 10 trying to rap, it's good on mute. Again, always has some bars for girls. Then we get to When He's Gone. I like some of the bars on this song. They sound kind of awake again. Drake taking some funny shots at Americans, saying, 3 drinks in, I'm already playing therapist. Why you acting thirsty off anyone that's American? I don't want to talk about money, it gets embarrassing. H words gonna be H words, that's why I never married them. Again, making a lot of excuses for why he's not married yet. Keeps going, all they do is look at me, see me as an opportunity. All that's left between us is lease agreements and jewelry. All they left you with is anxiety and apologies. How you supposed to stay with a guy in this economy? Friends won't tell you I'm coming to you with honesty. Again, all his relationships just about, superficial garbage, materialism, all about money. When they break up, the only thing left is lease agreements and jewelry. At least he's being honest here. At least he's kind of giving us real perspective on, where he's at in these relationships, admitting that, he's not marrying any of these women because they're all H words, as he puts it. Nothing memorable here, and nothing memorable with the outro. I think I'd keep about, 5.5 to 8 songs off this 21 song project. This could be Drake's worst offering so far. There's a few redeemable qualities. He's kind of thinking outside the box on songs like Nokia or Die Trying. They play to their strengths on songs like CN Tower, Somebody Loves Me, or Give Me a Hug. Drake went from calling himself bisexual on his last album, a lesbian on the one before it. Now he's calling himself an HOE. There's no maturity here, not a lot of versatility. There's a lot of, repeating the same verses between Party and Drake, which is a really lazy way I find of doing a duet or a collab. When I think of that classic Toronto or Canada sound, I think of songs that have a lot more life, more soul, more energy, more variety to them. A lot of this project sounds like one very long, sad, flat song. And I will give Drake this, I do think he's making an effort to try to expand his vocal offering or his delivery or harmonizing. Like, he never really had a wide vocal range. He used to sound, very flat or monotonous on a lot of hooks, just singing in one certain tone. Now you're getting a lot of attempts of him singing in like falsetto or stretching out his vocals a lot more, stretching out, one single word. I just don't think he's executing it well at all. The crooning is extremely repetitive. The soul really feels like it's missing here. Like, I really like R&B. I like R&B Drake. The production on this is too slow, it's too stripped back, and that'd be fine if the vocals had more energy to them, but they really don't. Again, I think this is kind of the same approach he took with Her Loss. Like, he's going into Party's world and he's using Party as a crutch so that, you know, there's kind of this variety in the project, but he still makes Party take this back seat. So it just sounds like this lackluster Drake project. Then, you know, those random songs like Gimme a Hug, Nokia, the Padre song, the Mexican song, the Die Trying song, they don't fit the sound of the overall album. It's not cohesive at all, but they are still the highlights because he's doing something outside the box. He claims, you know, he loves beef, but he's suing and scared of the people that shot up his house, rightfully so, but blaming that on the lyrics of Not Like Us, but still on this project being, you know, pettier and angrier than ever, really harping on the beef, not letting things go. And let's give Drake a little bit of credit here. I do think that with his R&B songs, for me at least, a lot of the times they are growers. Like, this is not Ratchet Happy Birthday bad, but nothing stands out here. There's nothing good except for a few songs. I kind of expected this. Like, it sounds like For All the Dogs Part 2. There's more bars about shallow relationships. There's no evolution. He talks about not settling down constantly. Everything is very dark. He's repeating the same flows over and over again. In a lot of these songs, he keeps continuously repeating the same bar over and over again. Like, even on the outro with the whole "the more I get, the more I want" bar. Like, this is one of my biggest gripes with New Drake. I find he ruined an amazing R&B song with Hours in Silence because the whole second half of that song, he just keeps repeating the same flow and the same bars over and over and over again, making it almost unlistenable. And again, a lot of these songs are formulaic. He's following a very similar formula or framework to what he used on old R&B cuts like Shut It Down from Thank Me Later, but back then the choruses were better. The verses didn't feel so hollow. The relationships he was singing about felt like there was an actual story to them. This has shown he has really fell into, you know, like he says, that rapper life. Like, Kendrick and Cole have families. Drake has Grammys in his ladies' bathroom. Like, it's a cool life and all, but, you know, is being hip-hop's Hugh Hefner how you want to be remembered in 20 years from now? Like, look at The Weeknd this late in his career. He's giving us some of his best work. He sounds more alive than ever on his hooks. He has concepts with his project. He's really opening up about his vices within life. Meanwhile, Drake is here saying that, you know, he can't get married because all the women he's messing with are HOESs. And, you know, he loves the beef, but he still simultaneously has to sue over it. He loves the beef, but he's the only one of Kendrick and Cole who has not dropped a full song actually reflecting on the beef. Judging this as if the beef never happened, this is just a really stale, formulaic, repetitive album that we've heard a million times over from Drake, with the subject matter getting more and more immature as the years go on. And judging this as if this beef did occur, he's feeding into all the narratives that Kendrick painted, living this shallow, hollow, indulgence-fueled life, and making that the statement to his grand comeback. I get it. He used Party as the crutch to say, like, you know, guys, this isn't my main statement after this whole beef went down. If this flops, you know, blame it on Party. If you don't like it, blame it on the fact that I went back to that traditional Canadian sound and mixed Party in it, you know, because you're not like us. Honestly, when I hear this, I can't go back to think of, you know, his mentor, Lil Wayne, because for me, Lil Wayne was my favorite rapper of all time. But this album for me draws a lot of parallels to Wayne's kind of downfall when he dropped the Carter 4. Like, Drake is suffering a similar thing, but is refusing to settle into his role or kind of take a step back and give us something a little more mature. Like, Lil Wayne let his Young Money artists take that front seat. His projects kind of sounded less and less inspired as the years went on, less and less mature as well, with his lifestyle, you know, becoming more materialistic. So did the subject matter, but he wasn't obsessed with, you know, maintaining that role as the best rapper alive. He let, you know, Drake, Nicki, and Tyga carry on that legacy. But you see Drake here kind of going into a similar position in terms of substance within his music, but he's so obsessed with staying at the top. That's why he's chasing the youth, copying their sounds, living his life like he's on the road constantly and in the club without a spouse. And it leads to this type of subject matter, this type of BS. But he's so, you know, again, obsessed with maintaining his dominance within the game that he can't just take a moment of silence, let this whole, you know, Kendrick beef situation play out, or die out, I should say, let the party die, and come back with something more honest, more vulnerable, more mature. Maybe take the time to, you know, find yourself a spouse, get married, see what like living like a real adult is like, because obviously living that quote-unquote rapper life has led you to dropping R&B albums where it's more apparent than ever that the Sexy Red stunt double is spiraling. Let me know what you guys think, and I will catch you in the next one.